Pat, you're CEO, of course, of Dalata, which is Ireland's largest hotel group. What's your view of the world at the moment? What with, we've just had the US election, the COVID pandemic is still raging, Brexit around the corner. There's an awful lot going on, isn't there?
There's a lot going on, and I was smiling to myself last week. I was watching the 6 o'clock news with David McCullough, and he was talking about a meteorite that might want to hit Ireland or hit the earth, and he said that's all we need. And I was kind of saying to myself, well, if it's going to happen, it'll probably happen now, because we've had everything else.
Yeah.
And I suppose in life, like, these things are very trying and very difficult for lots of people, and people do struggle both mentally and physically in trying to cope with events like this. But I've been around a long time. I've seen lots of different things. I've seen lots of different crises. None of them to compare with this, by the way. But as sure as eggs are eggs, this will end, and essentially we will get back to what I would term the new normality. Because what we've seen is there'll be lots of different shifts that will have taken place in the way we work and the way we look at things and the way some of our businesses work. So we have to be able to adapt and change to the new normality, and there will be a new normality. But I suppose from a Dalata perspective, we've looked at things, I suppose, in kind of blocks. And I have always said that this year, 2020, is about making sure you survive and survive well.
Yeah.
And then 21 is when we start the rebuild of our business. And then 22 is when we get back to this new normality, which will not be as good as 2019. I don't believe we'll be back to 2019 levels until the following year. But if we look at it in that sense, it gives you some kind of semblance of planning and how to look at things. But it is challenging for people to get their heads around what they need to do when they're looking into the abyss as we currently are. But mark my words, things will start to happen. Things will start to improve. And if you look at it, even today, we've had some positive news coming out on the vaccine side.
Yeah.
So I think this could move very quickly. And because we have so many millions and billions of euro being fired into this, that we will get it right, and there will be a distribution method, and we will have a vaccine, and that'll start to kind of get the whole virus thing under control.
Yeah.
And then we move on from there. But we will have a new business model as we emerge from this.
But I presume nobody foresaw what 2020 has brought in terms of the pandemic. So I presume Dalata has been walloped in terms of share price, in terms of have you had to close any of your hotels, or are they all still trading?
Yeah.
How have you sort of managed the last 8-9 months? Because nobody could have planned this, and equally it's unprecedented. So we've all sort of had to learn on the go.
Yeah. So back, I remember I was actually in the US. I was on an investor run, and with my IBEC hat on, I was due to go to the White House to give the shamrock to President Trump with our Taoiseach at the time. And I remember getting nervous, and we cut the trip short. The whole event got cancelled out in DC, but we cut the trip short, and I came back. We immediately got our plans in operation. And we kind of said, let's keep this very simple and very focused. So we said, there's 3 things we need to do and do very well. The first thing is look after our people and take care of them, whether they're actually in work with us or out of work, and make sure we communicate well and we give them a sense of purpose, even if they're not employed with us. The second thing we said, we need to look after our customers who have, like we would have had hundreds of thousands of reservations in the systems that had to be dealt with. So all of those customers had to be dealt with fairly and quickly. And the third, and probably the most critical part of it, was to look after our cash and how we'd manage that and prevent cash burn. Because if you run out of cash, you can do none of the other 2. So it wouldn't matter. So all of those 3 things. And when I look back in hindsight, we've managed to do all 3 pretty well. So if I look at the stability of the company where we are today, we're in very good shape financially, but everything is relative. So we have about 310 million in cash or access to cash, which means we can survive for a terribly long time without having to do anything else other than what we've done already. We were lucky we were able to go to shareholders and raise about 94 million. We sold our Charlemont and did a sale and lease back on the Clayton Charlemont. We raised 60 odd million on that. And we had a good strong balance sheet. And I still have a good strong balance sheet with lots of good assets. And I suppose what's come true is that the model that Dalata have, where we have a mixture of both leased long-term leases and assets that we own, is the ideal mix. When I look across Europe at the devastation that's happened companies where they went into the asset light model and suddenly have nowhere to go. Yeah. So all of those things. I'm delighted with our people. And you know, we've been able to provide lots of training and development for our people. And I think I mentioned to you at some point that during the pandemic, up to last week, around 54,000 courses were taken by our people on our Dalata online training portal, which is fantastic because it means people are really well engaged. But on top of that, we've done things like wellness. We have an EAP program where people who are challenged mentally or physically or financially or whatever will step in to give them support and help in that. And that's being used. And then I suppose we have lots of other things like fitness at home, you know, cooking classes. And a lot of these are run by our own people internally. Yeah. And they have proved enormously successful. And we're lucky that we have great technologies that we can communicate with our people on a narrowly basis if I so need to. Now, I don't think they want to hear from me every hour, but I do regular videos and updates for them. And each of them have their app on their phone where they can communicate. And they can give me feedback as well, which they do, by the way. So,
and have all the hotels continued trading, or have you had to mothball some of them?
No, so as we stand today, every one of our 44 hotels are in operation.
That's across Ireland and the UK.
That's Ireland and the UK. And our plan is to keep that moving and keep it as is. There's no reason I need to do anything else other than what we're doing at this point in time. Now, obviously, they're operational as opposed to being open, because obviously we're not open to the public per se, unless you're frontline or designated industries and things like that. And so we have decided to keep everything moving. And so far, we're not disappointed at where we're at on it. Like, obviously, we're in a very different place than we would normally be. But look, at a point in time, you have to be comfortable with what we've managed to do.
Yeah. How has the share price performed?
I knew you'd ask that awkward question. Terrible. Yeah. Like if you take it that our market cap is, let's say, around 600 million at the moment. Our share price is at around 250. It runs between 250 and €3. And if you look at the value of our assets, these are the owned assets, which was valued in June, that's 1.2 billion. So our share price is less than half the value of the owned assets, never mind any value it might ascribe to the long-term leases, which they do because they generate cash for us. Yeah. So we're totally undervalued, but that's life. Yeah, that's the public market.
Good time to buy, I'd say.
Well, I can't possibly comment on that.
Do you think there might be an opportunity for Dalata in this crisis, insofar as you mentioned you've got a very strong balance sheet, you're a very strong company built on very strong foundations. Other hotels will be in more distress. So might there be an opportunity to maybe win market share once we come out of this crisis?
Yeah, so there's a number of things. Like if you look at Dalata, we were born in a crisis. So we were born in the last financial crisis, and we came out of that actually stronger than we went into it, which was a great feat for us. And we became the largest operator in Ireland by 2010, and a position we've held ever since. I mean, we look at things as to what might arise for us in terms of distressed hotel assets. More than likely, that'll be in the UK. We feel that our kind of penetration of the Irish market is about right. We have 3 hotels, or 2 hotels under construction and 1 going through a planning process in Dublin. The 2 hotels will open at the end of, 1 will open in the middle of next year, and the other will open either late next year or early into 22. So that's about it for us. We're not going to pursue that. But in the UK, it's a very different story.
Yeah.
And for the first time in a long time, we are seeing value in London.
Yeah.
And that's where there may be opportunity. Like we did announce 2 new bills, one for Manchester and one for Brighton, and they were done post-COVID, so they're post-COVID pricing, which means that we're very attractive entry into the marketplace at that level.
Yeah.
And we do see opportunities emerging in London, both for new build and possibly for existing. There's nothing to tell the market just yet, but it is more encouraging, let's say.
Yeah, and the 3 hotels, going back to the pipeline in Dublin, I think, is that Tara Towers? I think you've got one near.
Yes, no, it's to give its correct title, it's the Maldron Merrion Road.
Okay.
The Samuel, which is part of the Salesforce.com campus, down beside the convention centre, and then the Maldron in Crow Park.
And it's all guns firing on those. You haven't pressed pause on the construction or delayed things.
We have 13 hotels going through various levels of activity, whether they're well under construction, going through planning phases. We've pressed pause on nothing. Everything is moving ahead as normal. And I was just looking, like, between, I suppose, the second half of 21 into the first quarter, we'll have probably 7 or 8 new openings during that period, which is significant for us.
Absolutely, and it's great to have positive news within the tourism sector, which has obviously got such a hammering. Just wearing your IBEC hat, you mentioned you were in Washington in March, but you finished up with IBEC, I think it was last month. That must have given you a sort of even a wider view of the Irish economy and maybe how the Irish government views the economy and sort of enables the economy to prosper or otherwise. What was your take on that year?
I suppose one of well, there was a lot of takeouts from that, and I was delighted that I got to be appointed to that role. It was a great honour for me personally, coming from the bogs of South Sligo, and being rubbing shoulders with all the very fine people in IBEC. And I suppose one of the things that struck me and is what a wonderful economy we have in Ireland. And we are in a place where nobody else can match us, where we have essentially 2 economies. We have the FDI economy, which obviously is, medtech, obviously the digital, pharma chemicals, all of those things, all really working very well, even as we speak, despite all of the pandemic. And then we have the domestic economy, which is the one that's obviously struggling. And that has the potential to come back pretty quickly, actually. Yeah. Other than, obviously, if you look at our food industries, which may and possibly will be greatly impacted by Brexit, which is a different story. But the structure and the strength of our economy is something to be proud of. And if you look at the way it's set up, and our IDA have done a wonderful job in setting up. So, for example, if you take medtech in Galway, we are now in medtech number 2 in the world after Minneapolis, which 5-10 years ago we were nowhere. Like, it's a phenomenal success. Yeah. And then we look at the pharmachem in Cork and the Apples, and then you come to Dublin, you have the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons, the Microsofts, all of those. All of those kind of, I suppose, cluster together with similar people requirements, really adds to the way our economy is structured. And then with the universities and our GMITs and our CITs and all of those coming in behind, supporting all of the industries that's in their area, it is a great model. And sometimes when I hear people being critical of what we're doing, I just think it's phenomenal what goes on. And the other thing that kind of surprises me is the way people are surprised when our exchequer numbers come out, how good they are relative to where they expected to be.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a genius, and if it did, I wouldn't be able to figure it out. But like when you look at how our numbers are holding up, and if you look at the Irish economy, it's expected now to decline somewhere around the 2, maybe 2.5% in 2020, which is phenomenal. Like there's no country in Europe comes within a NASA's roar of it.
Yeah.
And yet, sometimes, and it really aggravates me when I hear people being critical of Ireland and what we have done. We, as a nation of people, and the confidence we have got in ourselves, it is fantastic. So we should be very proud as a nation, not arrogant, but proud of what we've done.
Yeah. And are you confident that we'll bounce back? I can tell you are confident that we'll bounce back from this crisis. And even in the tourism sector, which obviously has had a much steeper decline than, single digit figures like you mentioned, and, the industry is to a certain extent on its knees without international air access, but we'll be back. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely back. And I suppose, one of the things we have to look at in the hospitality sector is that because we have the strong FDI sector, which is really leading our corporate business, and then you have domestic, I suppose, market in terms of leisure, but you have international leisure business as well, which, is relatively easy to tap into. And what we need to make sure is that, one of the critical parts is, and this is something, Owen, you'd be very aware of, is to maintain our connectivity to the rest of the world. Like, we're an island nation, and as that, we need the connectivity to North America, to Europe, and beyond, and the UK, obviously. They are critical parts of what we need to do as an island nation.
Pat, in the budget that we had last month, there was a number of positive pro-tourism measures, which I know we all lobbied hard for. One of them was the VAT reduction to 9%, but it's only for a kind of a 14-month period, which we're all a little bit uneasy about.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good point, Owen, that if you look at it, for next year, we'll be starting the rebuild, but the real rebuild will be coming in 22 and 23. Yeah. And in order to achieve that, we will need support along the VAT, and maintaining that at its rightful place, by the way, is 9%. It shouldn't be anything else. And I think, we're kind of fooled into thinking it's 13.5. And in my view, 9% is the rightful place for VAT on hospitality products. And it only puts us kind of not even in a competitive basis with the rest of Europe. We're still well above most countries. Yeah. But in saying that, and this idea that the exchequer loses money as a result of giving VAT reduction, if you think back to 2012, the take on the 13.5% was something around $500 million a year. By the time it was taken away from us back in 2019, that take had risen to 1.1 billion a year. Yeah. Anybody tries to tell me that the exchequer lost as a result of that, and on top of that, and you're very aware of this, the fantastic number of jobs that were created at the time, and we led the way actually, as an industry, in getting Ireland out of the financial mess that it was in after the financial crash. So I'm going to be very strong on this, and I'm not letting go of this one. As you know, you and I have talked about this a lot, and we all need to work together on this.
Absolutely. Last question, Pat. You mentioned that, the full recovery back to 2019 levels is probably 3-4 years away. What about the small to medium-sized tourism business out there at the moment? How do they get through, that period between now and sort of then? Is it head down, keep an eye on costs, manage your way through the crisis? Or, I mean, there's no magic wand I know that can be waved, but any advice from a sort of a macro perspective?
I think there's one very important element, is that we need to keep the right mindset and not let this get you down. And I know that's easy to say and difficult to do. But if you keep your right mind and you focus on the things that you can affect, you'll amaze yourself at what you can do, and not to become disheartened by it, because it's so easy. to kind of allow this to gnaw at your inners, and kind of then your decision making becomes poor. You make kind of hasty decisions. And I suppose the other thing I'd say to people is have a plan, have a clear plan as to what you want to do. And that plan will have to get adjusted, because what you plan for today may change tomorrow, and be kind of mindful of that. But the right attitude, and trying to remain positive. And, you know, as business leaders, we owe that to our people, to show them leadership and to give them something that they can hold on to, because otherwise, you know, we won't have done our jobs well if we don't do that. But there is a way out of this for everybody. Will some people fall by the wayside? Unfortunately, that's inevitable around this. But what if you're a survivable business, there's lots of government supports out there as well that should be helpful to a lot of people to keep them alive, and make sure you understand and take up those supports as much as you can. That's what the government wants you to do, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's around things like that. But our mindset is the most critical and important part, and how we get up every day and motivate ourselves. And as I always say, always have a few moments of madness and give yourself a bit of an old belly laugh now and again. Yeah. And don't let as we say in the West, don't let the buggers get you down.
Great advice, Pat. Thank you so much.
No problem. Good to talk to you.